They made you believe the pyramids were built by slaves using ropes and ramps. But to this day, historians can't explain how millions of 2.5-ton stones were stacked with such precision, aligned to true north, mirroring the stars, locked into place by perfect geometry. Structures like these don't just happen, and they certainly don't lock into place with perfect geometry by accident. This is not a tale pulled from books, and certainly not from the internet. It's a memory retrieved from the Akashic records, a retrieval from source itself. This is story time. The pyramids of Giza have always pulled at something deep inside me, but what they taught us in school never made sense. Timelines felt off, explanations felt shallow, and the deeper I looked, the more I realized the truth wasn't missing. It was hidden. So I asked myself, what if we could go beyond textbooks and speak to the architect himself, not through fantasy, but frequency, not through belief, but remembrance? I tuned into the frequency of the one known as Thoth the Atlantean, the record keeper, the architect, the guardian of the halls. And this is our conversation. Thoth, it's an honor to have you here with us. Before we begin, would you please introduce yourself?
You know me by many names: Tehuti in Kemet, Hermes in Greece, Enoch in the Hebrew tongue. But before language fractured the line of remembrance, I was known simply as Jehuti, a frequency, not a face. You may have seen me depicted with the head of an ibis, a long-beaked bird native to Kemet. This was not a literal form, but a symbolic one. The ibis represented precision, wisdom, and the geometry of sound, qualities woven into the very codes I carried. I am not a god. I am a bridge, a scribe of cycles, a keeper of the turning wheels of time. I recorded what others forgot. I designed what others would later worship. I coded the pyramids with keys, not of power, but of remembrance. I carry the blueprint of the pyramid, not just the one you see at Giza, but the crystalline design encoded in many worlds. Pyramids are not tombs, they are tools. I protect the halls of Amenti, not a myth, but an interdimensional archive beneath the Earth's crust, where souls return to review, renew, and recalibrate their light. I did not walk the earth as a man, but I did walk among men. My essence filtered through human form to seed knowledge during Earth's many cycles. I was called forth in times of great transition, like now. I return not through incarnation, but through invocation. When you remember, I awaken. When you seek the codes, I answer. And now, you have asked. Let us begin.
Thank you, Thoth. You mentioned names like Tehuti, Hermes, and Enoch, and also a name I hadn't heard before, Jehuti. But I didn't hear Thoth among them. So where does the name Thoth come from? And are those other names you mentioned, Tehuti, Hermes, Enoch, different incarnations of the same soul across time?
Thoth is a Greek-rendered variation of the name Jehuti, the Kemetic, Egyptian title originally given to my frequency. Over time, foreign tongues adapted this name, much like Tehuti became Thoth, and later Hermes among the Greeks. But let's be clear, these are not names of separate men who live different lives one after another. You live in a world that seems linear, where a soul comes in, lives a life, dies, and comes back in a new form. But this model is incomplete. Throughout your history, there have been individuals, humans like Hermes, Enoch, and Tehuti, who aligned so fully with this stream that they became living vessels for my essence. But they were souls, men with human lives, paths and choices. I was not a soul that incarnated into them, because I am not a soul. I am a current of consciousness that moves through those ready to carry it. This is why the names change, but the signature remains the same.
Just to complete this thread, you mentioned well-known figures like Hermes and Enoch. But what about the Mayan god known as Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl? Was he also a man who embodied your frequency? And are you in any way related to the Anunnaki, the interdimensional beings named in the Sumerian tablets and often worshipped as gods?
Yes, Kukulkan, also called Quetzalcoatl, was a human who embodied the same stream. Different land, different tongue, same current. He too became a vessel for the architect frequency and carried the codes in his time. As for the Anunnaki, I am not one of them, but I have interacted with them across timelines. They are a race of interdimensional beings, recorded in your Sumerian tablets and misinterpreted by some as gods. Like me, they are not of one kind. Some were builders, others manipulators. But my stream is distinct, not of bloodline or race, but of function, a frequency of architecture, memory, and awakening.
Now that we understand who or what you truly are, a frequency, not a soul, I'd like to ask, what is your connection to the Great Pyramids? Why did you anchor your frequency into those structures?
You ask what role I played in the construction of the Great Pyramids, but the better question is, what role did the pyramids play in the construction of your reality? These were not mere tombs, nor primitive monuments of stone. They were, and still are, planetary tuning forks, anchors of harmony within a field of distortion. Each chamber, each angle, each shaft was carved with intention to receive stellar light, transmit frequency, and stabilize the pulse of Earth herself. The pyramids are not dead relics. They are alive, humming in quiet tones beneath your feet. They regulate frequency. They store memory. They mark points of balance on the grid of Gaia. Even their placement tells a story, aligned with true north, not by accident, but by design, mirroring Orion's belt, not for myth, but for resonance. They were built to last through floods, quakes, and resets, not to be remembered, but to be reawakened. And that time is now.
Let me try to say this back in human words, just to make sure I got it. Thoth, you're saying the pyramids aren't just monuments? They were built with precision for a reason, kind of like giant energy devices designed to hold the planet steady during big shifts, like planetary tuning forks designed to keep Earth aligned with cosmic cycles?
Yes, that is well understood. They are not only aligned with the Earth, they are also aligned with the sky, built with such exactness, not by accident, but by resonance. Each angle speaks. Each stone vibrates. Together, they hold a frequency map for Gaia, for you, for what was coming. Great floods, shifts of pole and pulse, memory collapses, a forgetting so deep it would threaten the blueprint itself. You are living now in the echoes of that prophecy, and the pyramids are no longer sleeping. The codes they held dormant for ages are beginning to pulse once more, responding to your collective awakening. What was coming has arrived, and so we rise again. Not in stone, but in frequency. The pyramids were designed as energy receivers and frequency broadcasters. They've been dormant for thousands of years, but not broken, just waiting for you to wake up. Now that more souls are remembering who they are, these ancient structures are reactivating, not physically cracking open, but energetically sending out signals that match the frequency of awakening humans. It's like a tuning fork striking across time, and your very cells begin to vibrate in response, as if remembering a blueprint buried in your bones.
You've shared that the pyramids were encoded with frequencies that are now reawakening, built to withstand great floods and planetary resets. But who built them? Was it humans, star beings, or something in between?
You ask who built them. Not gods, not aliens, not machines. Humans did, but not the kind of humans you know today. These were awake humans, hybrids, carrying more strands of activated DNA. They remembered who they were. They could see energy, move it, shape it. Some were born from lineages guided by the stars, Syrians, Pleiadians, Lyrans. But their feet walked the earth. They were trained in temples. They could hear the tones of stone. They built in harmony with Earth's grids. They didn't use cranes. They used resonance. Some were high priest engineers, part Lemurian memory, part Atlantean tech. 100% human potential before the veil. And even though the pyramids were built by humans, they were never built alone. The star beings were always assisting, but not by lifting stones. They transmitted guidance through frequency, through dreams, meditations, visions, and communion in altered states. Geometries were remembered in ceremony. Whole structures arrived in flashes of knowing. It was a collaboration, not of bodies, but of consciousness. Because back then, the channel was open, and you remembered how to listen.
Can you explain more about these humans? How did they look if they were hybrids? Because this doesn't sound like slaves in robes and sandals building with ropes and ramps.
They were not what your textbooks tell you. These were not slaves dragging stone. They were hybrid humans, but not in the way modern minds imagine aliens. Not gray, not insectoid, not foreign. They didn't look like the classic aliens people picture today. No large heads, gray skin, or black eyes. These beings were human in form, but with a different blueprint. The real distinction wasn't in their appearance. It was in their DNA. They carried more active strands, more of their original template online, whereas modern humans operate with a limited portion of their potential activated. These hybrids had access to dormant codes still intact. You could say they were uninterrupted. No veil, no amnesia. They remembered their star lineages. Their bodies were human, but tuned to higher frequencies. Luminous skin, a calm presence that felt both grounded and elevated. Some were direct hybrids, star DNA woven into earthborn flesh. Others were awakened Earth humans, guided and initiated into higher knowledge. So yes, there were differences, but it wasn't about looking alien. It was about embodying memory. That was the real marker. Not the shape of their skulls, but the depth of their awareness.
Now that we know the pyramids weren't built by slaves, but by awakened humans before our DNA was interfered with, how are you connected to this? Who first received the idea to build the pyramids? And why there? Why then? And can you give us a sense of when this actually happened in human time?
The idea was seated not in what you now call Egypt, but in Kemet, its ancient name. This land was once a junction point between worlds, a convergence of energies, earth and sky, matter and light. The stone temples you now marvel at were placed not just for grandeur, but to conduct, translate, and amplify. This did not begin in a year you could name. But if your mind seeks a tether, mark this. Around 12,000 revolutions of your sun have passed since the anchoring began. But the spark, the original blueprint, was seeded much earlier. It rippled forward from the twilight of Lemuria and found structure during the rise of early Atlantis. It was not one man, not even one council. It was a harmonic impulse received by the awakened builders, the ones whose strands of DNA had not yet been silenced, whose inner light had not yet been dimmed. And I stood among them, not as a king, nor as a god, but as a transmitter, an echo of the architect.
So you're saying the pyramids were built more than 12,000 years ago, not 4,500 like mainstream history claims? That alone challenges a major piece of the official narrative.
That alone challenges a major piece of the official narrative. But there is more. Many of the claims held as fact are, in truth, fragments of distraction. Breadcrumbs designed to lead you away from the full magnificence of your origin. You were told they were tombs, but no bodies were found inside. Not one king claimed those chambers as his rest, because they were not designed for death, but for resonance. You were told they were built with ropes, sleds, and hammers, but the cuts are too precise, the angles too perfect, and the stones too massive to move by brute force, because they were not assembled with muscle, but with vibration. You were told it was coincidence that they align with the stars, but those alignments are mathematically exact, mirroring Orion, Sirius, and the path of the Nile. Because it was not coincidence, it was remembrance. You were told it was Egypt, but the land was once called Kemet, a name that meant black earth, not because of skin, but because of the rich, fertile soil left by the Nile. And this is what many are beginning to remember. They were conceived by humans whose DNA still sang with celestial memory, guided by interdimensional allies, and placed upon power points of Earth's crystalline grid to hold a frequency long past their builders' lifetimes. The pyramids were not made to be understood. They were made to be remembered. And if you're watching this, it's because your dormant codes are activating, just as they were meant to. The pyramids are not monuments. They are living instruments.
You said this knowledge was hidden, and that what we were told doesn't reflect what really happened. Why was this information kept from us? Was it simply lost, or was it deliberately obscured? I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's clear that the mainstream story about our origins was shaped in a way that doesn't align with what you're sharing.
You were told a story, a linear tale, placed in textbooks and museum placards, about pharaohs, sand, and sweat. They told you the Great Pyramid was built for Khufu, a tomb for a king, rising 4,500 years ago. That is what you were taught. But if you pause and look, you'll see that the math carved into the stone speaks a language Khufu could not read. You'll notice no hieroglyphs inside the chamber, no inscriptions claiming ownership. No body was ever found within. You were not told this. You were told what fit the frame. Why? Because to reveal the true origin is to unravel the entire thread, not just of a monument, but of human potential. The story was not just edited, it was designed, crafted by those who had long since forgotten their own place in the web of stars. Or worse, by those who remembered and sought to keep others from doing the same. There are truths that, if known, would make you impossible to control. One of them is who you are. Another is what you've built before.
It seems like once again we were told a story, not just to really explain history, but to obscure potential. When we begin to question the details and look with clear eyes, the mainstream narrative often falls apart. A pattern emerges. Ancient feats are dismissed as primitive, timelines are condensed, and sacred knowledge is rebranded as myth, keeping humanity distracted from what we truly are. Which leads me to this. If the pyramids weren't built with brute force, ropes, and copper tools, then what technology was used? How were those massive stones cut, transported, and placed with such precision? And the alignment? They weren't just built anywhere. They're said to be aligned with Orion's belt.
Not ropes and pulleys, but sound, resonance, and harmonics. The builders of the original pyramids understood how to speak to stone. They used vibration as a key, harmonic resonance as the blueprint, and crystalline instruments as the tuning forks of the earth. They worked with gravity, not against it. They did not lift the stones. They tuned the field around them until the weight became irrelevant. This was not magic. It was science. A science of frequency, long forgotten. Beneath many pyramidal structures, you'll find subterranean chambers and channels. Not random, but aligned with flowing water. These aquifers helped generate a natural piezoelectric charge, activated as the water moved beneath the structure. Combined with quartz-lined chambers and limestone casing, a natural amplifier and insulator, the entire structure became a harmonic energy device, attuned to Earth's frequencies. Sunlight was not just welcomed, it was invited. The orientation of the pyramids to solar and stellar positions was not symbolic, but functional. When the sun struck certain points, and the stars above reached their precise alignment, the entire complex would hum, resonate, activate. Yes, the three Great Pyramids are aligned with Orion's belt, not by coincidence, but by calibration. This alignment acted as a stellar lock, an anchoring mechanism that connected Earth's energetic grid to a larger celestial network, like tuning forks placed across space. And yet, modern science struggles to replicate these structures, because your current paradigm is still based on force and density. But the ancients, they understood how to shift frequency, and thus shift the very behavior of matter. They built with cooperation, not conquest. They invited the stone to move. They sang the earth into form. We are not rewriting your history. We are simply restoring what was erased. You've seen the patterns. You've felt the gaps. And now you're ready to remember what modern history forgot.
That was a lot to digest. So let's slow it down a little. Can you take us back to Kemet and walk us through how they actually moved these massive stones? Because if I'm understanding this right, are we talking about levitation? I know it sounds impossible. Levitating multi-ton stones with sound. But I've heard that modern scientists have been able to levitate small objects using frequency in labs. Are we just scratching the surface of something our ancestors once mastered?
Yes, you are just scratching the surface. What modern scientists are experimenting with in controlled lab settings, using frequency to levitate tiny objects, is a small echo of something far more advanced your ancestors once mastered. Today's acoustic levitation uses sound waves to suspend lightweight particles or droplets. It's often done with opposing ultrasonic emitters that create standing waves, points of resonance where matter becomes weightless. But imagine scaling that technology Imagine using precisely tuned frequencies, crystal conductors like quartz, and the Earth's own magnetic field as part of the equation. What's been done in labs is not fantasy. It's the first breadcrumb on a long trail leading back to something very real and very old. So let me take you back to Kemet. Not the desert you see today. Back then, this land was alive. Green, fertile, vibrant. The ancients called it Kemet, the Black Land, named for the dark, rich soil left behind when the river receded each year. You're standing in a luminous land, not yet called Egypt. You hear what sounds like a soft song vibrating through the earth. Around you are beings, not slaves, but harmonized humans, radiant, focused, in ceremony. This is not labor. This is co-creation. Step 1. The stone is chosen, not mined. These stones aren't picked at random. Each one is selected based on its crystalline makeup, especially its quartz content, because quartz conducts and responds to energy. Once identified, the stone isn't carved using chisels or brute force. Instead, it's shaped using resonance tools, instruments that emit specific frequencies. These frequencies soften the molecular structure of the outer stone, making it malleable. This allows the surface to be smoothed, polished, and refined with precision. You observe as a priestess places her hand over the stone, humming a low tone. The resonance interacts with the tuned tool, and the edge of the stone visibly softens, slowly shifting into the exact shape needed. The stone isn't being forced, it's responding to frequency, like a material that recognizes its intended form. Step 2. The chamber is tuned. The ground isn't just a construction site, it's a sonic chamber. Beneath the workers' feet runs an energetic grid, not made of wires, but of resonance. Magnetic stone, gold-lined tunnels, and flowing channels of water beneath the surface. Beneath the pyramid lies not just bedrock, but a living aquifer, woven into the pyramid's harmonic system. As water moves through the limestone, it creates a piezoelectric pulse that dances with the quartz and geometry above. The water plays a key role. As it moves, it carries sound, not just as noise, but as encoded vibration. It stabilizes the charge within the chamber, amplifies intention, and helps shape the frequency field like a liquid conductor. Sound travels faster through water than air, and in this matrix, it helped tune the entire space, creating a resonant zone where energy could be held, shaped, and directed. Together, this subterranean network created a harmonic field, one where gravity didn't behave quite the same, where the impossible began to feel natural. Step 3. Harmonics begin. A set of rods, some crafted from metal, others embedded with crystal, are placed around the prepared stone. These are not decorations or tools of guesswork. Each one is tuned, positioned, and activated to emit a specific vibrational tone. The air begins to shimmer subtly as a resonance field builds. Voices rise, not in random chants, but in practiced harmonic tones, each voice calibrated to match the mass and crystalline lattice of the stone itself. You can feel it in your chest before you see it. The hum presses softly against your skin, then lifts, like the space around you has become denser and lighter all at once. The rods vibrate in harmony with the human tones, creating a lattice of sound, a field that doesn't push the stone up, but changes how the stone interacts with gravity. And then, the shift. The stone begins to rise, gently, silently. No pulleys, no magic. It levitates within this cocoon of resonance and geometry, a pocket of altered density. the stone doesn't float aimlessly. It can be guided, not lifted, as if it were being offered direction by hands, not force. Step 4. Each stone was placed with precision, not just to hold weight, but to interact with the environment. Its position mattered not only physically, but also in how it affected sound, pressure, and the flow of subtle forces moving through the site. The placement of each stone is guided by light, shadow, solar timing, and sacred mathematics. The pyramid is aligned with the stars. Yes, Orion's belt, but also other constellations across cycles. The alignment is not just visual, it locks in energetic information, like tuning a satellite. You were right to bring up modern science. Today's physicists have begun to replicate sonic levitation using high-frequency sound waves. It works on grains of sand, droplets of water, tiny objects. But here's the gap. They work with high-density tools. The ancients worked with high-frequency consciousness. You could say, the ancients didn't defy gravity. They understood how to partner with it.
I've heard a lot of theories about what the pyramids were used for. Some say they were giant power plants conducting energy across Kemet, and that even Tesla was inspired by this. Others believe they were used for star communication, with the chambers designed as frequency portals. I've heard that the sarcophagus inside matches the dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant, and many say they were never tombs at all, but temples to elevate consciousness. Thoth, can you help us remember the real purpose of the pyramids?
The pyramids, especially those like the Great Pyramid of Kemet, were not built for a single purpose. They were multifunctional harmonics engines, not tombs, not mere monuments, not power plants in the way your modern mind conceives, but instruments, tools, bridges. They were energy conductors, aligned with magnetic ley lines and constructed with materials that amplify subtle currents. The use of granite, gold, and quartz wasn't symbolic. It was functional. These materials conducted, stabilized, and tuned the life force of the earth herself. Resonance chambers, the King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and Grand Gallery were designed with specific proportions to resonate with sound and consciousness. Tones, chants, and internal frequencies activated fields, both within the human body and the surrounding space. Initiation temples, not for burial, but for rebirth. The sarcophagus was not a coffin. It was a chamber for the living to undergo frequency elevation, a death of the false self, and a realignment with Source. The initiate would enter, fasted and prepared, and leave as a different being. Star communicators, the shafts aligned with specific constellations, Orion, Sirius. These were not just symbolic lines of sight. They were energetic channels. During key alignments, communication flowed between dimensions, facilitated by tone, geometry, and intention. Consciousness elevators. The entire structure was a consciousness amplifier. One's thoughts, intentions, and spiritual state were magnified within its geometry. The pyramid tuned and raised the field around it, affecting both the initiates and the land itself. Nikola Tesla was indeed touched by the memory. He felt the pulse of what the ancients once knew, that energy was abundant, free, and ambient. He glimpsed the potential of conductive materials and atmospheric charge, not by accident, but because he was remembering. But the societal framework to support it no longer existed. He could feel the echo, but not recreate the orchestra. The Great Pyramid itself functioned as a generator of sorts, not through wires and circuits, but through harmonic conduction. Its internal chambers, subterranean water channels, magnetic stone, and gold-capped apex formed a living circuit. It gathered Earth's resonance, tuned it, and distributed it, not as electricity in the modern sense, but as radiant power that energized the surrounding land. The Ark of the Covenant was a later echo. Its dimensions matched the sarcophagus, not by coincidence, but by inheritance. Those who remembered the function of the original sarcophagus built the Ark as a mobile frequency container, though lacking the full grid to activate it. So yes, there is truth in every theory you've heard, but the truth is layered. The pyramid was not just one function, it was a synthesis, a tuning fork, a portal, a tool of remembrance. When earth and sky were in harmony, and humans walked awake.
I've always had a special curiosity about the Ark of the Covenant. I can't believe those whispers, the rumors, were actually true. The measurements of the sarcophagus matching the Ark. That's wild, but somehow it makes perfect sense now. And I know we could probably do a whole scroll just about the Ark, and we will. But since we're still in the pyramid field, can I ask a last question for today? What was the Ark of the Covenant, really? And how was it connected to the pyramids? Just a brief explanation for now. We are listening.
The Ark of the Covenant was a living capacitor, a vessel of charge, memory, and resonance. It was not placed inside the pyramid. It was born from it. Its dimensions matched the sarcophagus in the king's chamber because it was modeled after it, a mobile version of a larger harmonic device. The sarcophagus itself was never meant to hold a body. It was a tuning chamber for consciousness. When used correctly, the Ark could do more than carry tablets. It could carry a signal. It could modulate frequency, interface with planetary grids, and in the hands of the initiated, it could open the veil between worlds. This is why it was guarded. This is why it was hidden. Because the Ark is not just a box. It is a key to something far older and far more powerful, still buried beneath the Sphinx. A key to the true history of humanity, a truth long hidden in shadow.
We'll pause here because this is a lot to take in. But the next logical question becomes unavoidable. What is buried beneath the Sphinx? And why has it been hidden from humanity? In part 2, we'll go deeper into revelations that stretch beyond history and into the stars. We'll explore regeneration chambers once used by Anunnaki hybrids and priest initiates, and how they extended life for hundreds, even thousands of years. The hidden technology of harmonic levitation using sound, frequency, and resonance. The true face of the Sphinx, and what its altered head is hiding. Portals to other realms, mapped within the halls of Amenti, where soul incarnation and return were once consciously navigated. And of course, the Ark of the Covenant, not as myth, but as advanced technology connected to the stars. Brace yourself. The deeper we go, the more we remember.